It's my pleasure to be here in Los Angeles for the Mobility or the MOBI colloquium today. And today I'm sharing with you my views on the car wallet. But before talking about the car wallet, what is Daimler Mobility, and blockchain all about? So we at Daimler Mobility started in end of 2016 to think about blockchain as part of our strategic vision. So we first started with like an agile team or organization within the whole company to think about blockchain use cases in general. But only thinking about blockchain actually is good to start somewhere, but we figured out it leads nowhere. So my boss, Dr. Harry Behrens, basically with this message went to the management and say, okay, if blockchain is really something that we want to leverage within Daimler Mobility, we can't not only think, discuss, we need to take action and build. So from March 2000, March, I think I mixed something up. So from earlier this year, I was in 2018. So from earlier this year, we started to build the blockchain factory. And the blockchain factory today is an internal team of 10 that basically do everything from like technological development, business modeling, partner management, and so on, that is needed to build what we so-call an open mobility ecosystem in the world of case and connected, autonomous, shared, self-served, and electric mobility future. Having said this, so how do we at Daimler Mobility imagine the future of mobility tomorrow? I mean, in our company, I think for the BMW guys here, this picture is quite familiar. They look more or less alike in every big car company. But let's have a look at this picture and talk a little bit about it. So we at Daimler Mobility think that actually in the future, what does the user want? So I want to take a little bit more a customer-centric approach to that. So we think that we not only think, actually if you ask yourself, the user wants to enjoy in the future a seamless mobility journey where he can consume mobility from multiple modes of transportation, and it would be great if I could do this with one single ticket to go from A to B. But think about yourself, have a look at your mobile phones and see how many different applications you have to consume mobility today. I myself, I don't like to use my mobile phone too much, so I don't have much. But I'm also too lazy to download those 18 different ones that I see in Berlin. I don't know what this is for Los Angeles, but I think it's the same. Bird, Lime, then whatever. So what do you do? Car2Go is pretty, Car2Go, Uber is actually mostly, I think, your choice of consuming mobility here in Los Angeles. But it's not only about the user. User is important, and definitely the mobility service provider that provides the user the best user experience. Probably today, I like the Uber app, I have to say, from UX, it's really beautiful. It's one side, but the other side is mobility service providers. So Uber is asset light, so they don't own their own vehicles, but they kind of demand them, and they also demand them in an autonomous mobility future. So how do they get their assets? They somehow need to convince mobility service providers. But especially with smart cities and public infrastructure and public transport, you see, I was in Hong Kong talking to the subway. They are very afraid of all those big players coming from China, those Didis and whatever, and segmenting the public transportation business from the private. Their biggest pain point is actually integrating mobility services or service providers into their existing product offering. And it's not only challenging to find them, it's even more challenging if you think about one-to-one contracting. And this is a little bit what I want to talk about in my session, and then basically going to the car wallet and say, why is the car wallet a USP for us to change the world of mobility in the future? So going back to this and say, okay, building an open mobility ecosystem that consists of a lot of mobility service providers out there, we think I think actually there are two ways. One way is this powerful Uber will go to me as a mobility service provider and say, you know what, I have such a big customer base, don't you want as a Bird or a Lime to integrate your service into my app? I will cut 30% of the revenues anyways, so make a decision because there are another 5, 6 out there waiting. That's number one. But where does it actually lack? And where do we see that we don't think that this holds in the future? It is all about technical integration and lack of standardization to say, okay, fair enough to do that. It's even for Uber such a big, let's say, engineering demand to do the whole technical integration and standardization for onboarding one-to-one, let's say a Lime, then a Car2Go, then this and this and this and this. So it's a huge cost. Then you have to find them. So it's not only you go there and say, okay, you're a mobility service provider, I'm Uber, besides you're scared of me and afraid that I will take your business anyways, you have to tell them why this is good for you. So there's today no clear and mature business models to say mobility service provider 1 and mobility service provider 2 work together. And this brings it all together. It's therefore nobody wants to cooperate, nobody understands what cooperation in the mobility business means, and so on. That's why we at Daimler Mobility thought, okay, how can we change that? And we changed that by what we call the mobility blockchain platform. And actually what the mobility blockchain platform is about, it's an open mobility ecosystem, decentralized, where everybody, first of all, can join the party. So, I mean, if Johannes comes to me and say, hey, it's interesting, I want to be part of such an open mobility ecosystem, let us talk about how we can build this infrastructure together. So it's not what we have experienced then with Google and Google Maps for autonomous driving, where we bet on Google Maps and they say, we don't allow you to use the protocols anymore because we are now in the autonomous driving business as well. No, it's then BMW, Volkswagen, and so on, define the protocols together that are necessary for the mobility future. So what we do, together with the companies that are interested in providing mobility services of tomorrow, we built the protocol economy tomorrow, where everybody has one seat at the table. And together build the infrastructure. Basically, we have economists here like a natural monopoly. So once we have done this, we can say, okay, now we have this infrastructure and it works in order to provide mobility services. Coming from there, we say, okay, we want to have perfect competition on top of this when it comes to applications. So everybody, like BMW maybe being better than us, I haven't said anything in autonomous driving, we maybe in mobility services and so on, we compete on a service layer. And this is what we do. And it's all, I mean, you have all seen this, it starts with, okay, digital identities, then it comes for, okay, how do we want to then deeply integrate them? It goes all through shared protocols. From there we go to digital contracting and basically end up in financial payment and settlement. So when we at Daimler Mobility talk about mobility, actually we talk about integrating mobility and financial services. It starts all, let's say, what is mobility? Actually, it's a service contract that is consumed. And if you take an Uber ride, we have heard it before, actually you have a service agreement with Uber using this ride from A to B. What do you need for that? Like if it's fully digital end-to-end, you need identities. You say, okay, I have a user identity and I want to do a contract with this car that is standing around there that somehow has this vehicle identity, so I can have a contract with this car that may be on behalf of a company that owns this vehicle. Once you're there and basically at the point where you say, okay, now we are signing the contract, you need something that is called a digital contract, and we can talk about how this then looks like. And fair enough, now we have contracting. We have contracting that is not done by a central platform, but by a decentralized platform or network. And what are you doing after you basically agreed on signing those contracts? And then you need something that settles liabilities. So basically, we would say, okay, you now entering the service contract with us, how can we settle this and pay it later? And this is the mobility blockchain platform, basically a B2B service network for mobility that actually does this. It says, okay, once you're a car sharing company like Car2Go, maybe in Munich, I want to offer my customers a vehicle from DriveNow. They are my customers. I subcontract with Johannes and say, fair enough, you can have this vehicle. We do a fair revenue sharing. Here we go. And building a platform together where our customers can consume mobility from multiple modes of transportation, not only being limited to vehicles that are cars, but also to scooters, then long distance traffic, ride hailing, and so on. But you could even think beyond this, say, okay, part of this can also be microinsurance, can be identity providers that say, hey, we help you in the mobility space to offer identity to verify your customers. Having that said, what is our stake at Daimler Mobility in the long run in such a decentralized service network? And this needs to bring us back to where we actually come from. So on one hand, of course, we as Daimler Mobility, we are a mobility service company, but we are heavily linked to our mothership, which is the Daimler AG. And for us, it is basically building vehicles and connecting vehicles to networks that can provide service. So in the past, I mean, BMW has already mentioned it, basically we have been only thinking about, okay, how can I as Daimler build my backend infrastructure and my siloed data lakes to somehow control the data that my vehicles collect and so on, but not even have thought about how could I utilize those data, how can I share it, and how can I make it available to maximum use. And this is what the car wallet all brings to us. So what is the car wallet? So before thinking about the car wallet, we need to understand what is the wallet. So actually a wallet, and like blockchain speaking, is a thing that first of all creates a public-private key pair that makes somebody addressable within a network. I can have my Ethereum wallet so that I'm addressable with my Ethereum public address within the Ethereum network. That is the first thing. So given this public-private key pair, what can I then do is I can start to do some identity binding. So I can say, okay, in the crypto anarchic way, I wanted to have an anonymous identity. That's why I don't need to do an identity binding. But if I, as a user, want to do a KYC, a know your customer process, like for example, with an identity service provider, I need to do some link. So I link my identity with my public-private key pair to say, okay, now I, as Robin, have a unique identity in this network where everybody knows these credentials belong to me and can identify me to be Robin doing transactions within this network. But this not only goes for humans. This can also go for companies. So you can do company identification by this, We call it Know Your Business Partner at Daimler Mobility. We're working on a solution for that, as well as vehicles. So what is a vehicle identity? How are vehicles registered? And there are beautiful startups out there that think about this solution every day. Filament is one of them. We started with Riddle and Code that couldn't come here today. Are another of them. So they're all thinking about how do you do this identity binding for vehicles? What I will come in a minute to. So once you have that, you kind of bring this vehicle now to a point where it's not locked or not only connected to a respective backend within those companies, but can do transactions, that's the last part, as a node itself within such a blockchain network, which leads us to a new world of possibilities out there. So why did we at Daimler even build? Because we're not thinking about a car wallet because it's very sexy. No, we had a problem. So we believe that the future of tomorrow is all about, and you see it here, it's all about that such a car within a network can do transaction by itself on behalf of its owner. And what we did is, everybody knows Uber and everybody may know Car2Go. So ride sharing, we say how cool would it be if I myself could just equip my vehicle with something to do end-to-end contracting on behalf of my identity. Let's say, what would this go to? It's like a Google Map then. You just say, okay, I want to find a new S-Class around town. You see there are a lot of S-Classes around. You can see, okay, what kind of service offering, the prices, everything does it provide. So I can go out, I say, okay, I want to have this black S-Class that is out there. I don't need to go and have a concierge anymore or a service point. I just go there, I find it, I say, hey, I'm Robin. Do you allow me to open the car? The car says, okay, you're basically verified to be an identity that is allowed to use me on behalf of the owner, basically on behalf, let's say, of you, to say, okay, this car can only be rented out to like people that are older than 25, and it needs to have a valid California driving license and so on. So you go there, you don't need to talk to anybody, it's just opening. You can jump in, you can enjoy your driving experience. You put it to the designated drop-off point that the owner of this car wants to have. And payments or liabilities are settled. They are cleared through payments, and this whole process takes you like a few seconds. And this is what we built. So we as a mobility service company, kind of being part of the Now group with BMW, kind of demonstrated this works fairly easy in a use case that we built with Riddle and Code. But it's not stopping there. It's just the first simple use case that we can do now. Go to fleet companies, say, you know what, we can help you with the utilization of your fleets, such as Uber did it with the drivers. We integrate a car wallet into your trucks, vehicles, vans, whatsoever, and the vehicle can do business on its own, and you don't need to worry about anything anymore. You get all the data relevant to the trip planning, the fuel consumption, the mileage, and so on from the vehicles directly. You don't need to think about software anymore because we know you're a traditional company. You don't have software systems supporting that. So end-to-end, the payment you don't need to worry about. You can even choose whether you want to have, let's say, a digital payment provider in the US, or you would want to use another one in Germany or another one in China, and so on. So, but this is only the starting point, as I mentioned. So where is this all going to? So we have seen this picture about the autonomous mobility future. What is it in the end? So it's about a vehicle that drives around, does all the service by itself that is a concern around this vehicle, let's say from charging. to parking, to paying for the parking spot that I just put, or that this autonomous car parked itself in a respective city. But also saying, okay, insurance. I mean, okay, now I had a car crash and I know the claims and everything around, so this micro insurance can work for itself. That's why we are in the game. This is what we can deliver, and this is definitely something where we, from our experience, are better than others and have a competitive advantage. That's why we do it. So how does it actually look like, and what does it involve when we come to talk a little bit more from a technical perspective? So like with everything, I mean this thing, identities. This is part of Mobi as well. We first need to find a standard for a car identity. And once the car has an identity, which somehow is connected to the hardware wallet, the car can be deeply integrated into an open mobility ecosystem, actually consuming smart contracts with other service offerings in this network. Let's say this can be a charging station, this can be a fuel station, this can be a car park, and so on, to say, okay, I as a car want to consume, I found out by some agents that this parking spot is free, and what I can do, I now want to consume your service offering. Then I as a car park say, fair enough, this costs you this and this and this, I want to enter this agreement with you. So once we've entered this agreement and came to an agreement, basically it needs to be settled. So there's a liability on both sides. Say from the car, you can say each minute that you're parking, you have to spend X dollars for that, and it's settled on like financial settlement platform. And what we do at Daimler Mobility actually is we are using something we call shadow cash, or an internal value unit, to do the settlement, to be independent from like a payment gateway. And the payment gateway can be both fiat and crypto. We can say, okay, actually what we only do by this shadow cash is we are playing a casino, right? So when you go to Vegas, you come with your money to the treasury and say, please give me chips with this respective value, and I play poker, I play like roulette, I play this and that, and hopefully winning, I go back and say, now I have that many tokens, please get me back my money. And doing it this way, in Germany at least, from a legal point of view, we don't depend on any banking regulation and so on. So we can integrate Square, Wirecard, Apple Pay, Google Pay, PayPal, and so on, in order to make this solution already available and ready for tomorrow. Okay, because it's blockchain, and blockchain only works if you have a clear picture. So we at Daimler Mobility, we have a very clear focus on supporting this approach by basically starting, where did we start? Before we even start thinking about mobility services, we came from a financial services background and say, we build a settlement platform for any transactions around a vehicle, or any transaction that concerns a vehicle. So in the past, what we did is this whole digital payment and end-to-end settlement that we call in Daimler Mobility the Smart VIN platform, that helps us with this. And on the mobility side, we have already started to do the user identity, and we are now working, this is why this vehicle is still whitish. We are starting to explore now how vehicle standards need to look like. We are there working together with different startups that are experts on that and help us understand how such a vehicle identity has to look like, how such a vehicle has to do the identity binding, their registration, and so on. Same thing goes with companies. So you need something like a digital company registration so that a vehicle can do a transaction on behalf of its owner, right? And once we have that, and once this is set, then we are ready. We are ready of the future of mobility. Because then we can come up with applications as mobility as a service. This whole thing, dynamic lease, to say, okay, you only pay the way how you use the vehicle and with your lease. The same goes with this whole thing about dynamic insurance. As we know all the data from the vehicle, and that is now trusted data, we can bring it down to use cases in the whole vehicle finance business. It goes further to what we've seen from BMW. Of course, we are also working on that, but it's rather from a production level and a little bit more future to say, okay, what is with the usage history, the mileage, and the service history? As we don't want to integrate it into our backends, but find a more, let's say, blockchain solution towards this, where a vehicle wallet is integrated in the solutions, we first need a functioning vehicle wallet for this. And then we will hear a lot, I think in the talks later, how tokenized financing and vehicle wallet is connected to tokens. So yeah, that's it for today from my side. I'm very happy as we are not yet from Daimler Mobility part of Mobi. We are doing everything to get part. Approach me out there, talk with me about your ideas, your solutions, and find something that we can work together and find solutions together that then are supported by the Mobi initiative. Thank you.